The succubus is an almost universal symbol for lust, captivation, and loss of control. It's even featured in Dungeons & Dragons, all the way back to the first edition, but they don't have much of a place in a game like Scion, where Christianity does not have the same ubiquity that it does in the real world. This is a place where you can pull out creatures that your players have never heard about before, as temptations for their characters' weaknesses, a particularly difficult boss battle, or as a way to further the plot via a particularly pretty face. However, a few notes before we start. Not everyone is into the idea of sexual content in their games, and that's okay. Whether it's because your group is not mature enough, or because someone has had a bad experience with it in the past, or simply because they aren't interested in that type of story, you should be aware of your group's opinion on the matter and endeavor not to cross their lines. Many of you are probably aware of the X card as a way of navigating difficult topics in role-playing games, and I'll link it below. Preferably, you would have a conversation before you even start your story with your players to gauge their comfort level with a variety of topics, including things like torture, the death or distress of children or animals, and sexuality in your games. There are a variety of resources that include questionnaires and forums for your band to fill out, but at the end of the day, you are the story guide, and it's your responsibility to play within the comfort zone of your players. That doesn't mean that you can't ever push them, but in an area as delicate as sexuality, it's best not to push those boundaries. Another note is that most of these characters will be feminine in nature. That doesn't mean that you can't have a male version of these creatures in your games. Supernatural has a male siren in it, but I'll be pulling from the original sources for this video. I've tried my best to find correct pronunciations for these names, but I apologize if they're not all accurate. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get started. The Samodiva are nymphs or fairies from Bulgaria, and while admittedly not Norse, do follow a lot of the same traditions as fairies from Norwegian myths. The Samodivas live inside trees or abandoned shacks or dark caves, near rivers, ponds, and wells, and are known to only visit the world sporadically, generally from spring until fall. They are said to the appearance of a beautiful woman with long blonde hair, but could, when angered, turn into a monstrous bird. Their voices are said to be seductive and captivating, and they have a great affinity to fire, being able to bring droughts, cause cattle to die of fever, or burn crops down. They can even throw fire when threatened. The Samodivas dance all night in the forests, tempting those who see to join in on the dance. Once a passing traveler did, however, his energy would be sapped away by the Samodivas as they feasted upon his soul until he collapsed, dying as the sun dawned. Not all the tales of Samodivas are malicious, however. The nymphs are also said to have great healing abilities. It is said that if you manage to listen in on a meeting of Samodivas, that you would learn the uses for all the magical herbs and cures for all illnesses. Their iconic blonde hair also had magical properties, but unfortunately they were no good for mortals. To receive a strand of Samodiva's hair would give them a stronger hold over you. There is an upside to this, however. If you manage to damage your hair, a Samodiva would be stripped of all of her powers and beauty. Another legend says that if you manage to get a Samodiva to prick herself on a thorn bush, that she will just evaporate. Since Samodivas are both healers and seducers, if a member of your band happens to have a curse or illness placed upon them by some other creature or god, the quest to retrieve the hair of a Samodiva could be a mini arc, or about one session long. You could also offer choices of them simply listening into the meeting of a coven of Samodivas and learning the recipe for a cure for their ailing friend, or you can make it a fight, with the band in peril of falling under her spell and joining her in the deadly dance to end their companions. Sirens are perhaps the most famous of all folkloric seductresses. They're part bird, part woman, creatures with voices so beautiful that anyone who hears them sing will be driven mad with lust towards them. Sometimes these women are portrayed as being little more than birds with a woman's head. Other times they're fully human with nothing but bird wings to signify their dual heritage. Interestingly, the word siren is used for both the traditional bird woman but also for mermaids. So this could be a neat twist for your band, having rounded up a few dozen nets with the intention of catching a bunch of sirens on a cliffside only to be attacked from the sea below. Sirens are quite well known, so you might have a bit of trouble making any use of them as a twist, but they can still be used if you want some generic beautiful women as an obstacle or stumbling block. Perhaps they even managed to find a good siren who will help them in their quest. Kejōrō are yokai, Japanese spirits, of prostitutes and are found most prominently in red light districts. They have beautiful bodies and clothing, but their long black hair covers their face completely, making it impossible to make out their true features. If a man somehow manages to get a look at her face, it is said that her hair will strangle him to death, or that he'll die of shock from the pure ugliness of her true form. If you're running a more mature campaign, a Kejōrō could be a combat encounter while also pointing towards something like a serial killer, such as Jack the Ripper, who has been targeting and murdering murdering prostitutes. Or the band could be looking for an item or information that resides within a current or abandoned brothel, and the Kejōrō could be the guardian of that space, or in the general vicinity and some sort of obstacle for them to move past. The Scottish creature known as the Baobhan Sith is another one of the various malevolent fairies on this list. She usually appears as a beautiful woman with deer hooves instead of feet. As a result, she wears a long green dress that conceals them, and can also appear as a raven from time to time. The most common elements from stories of the Baobhan Sith is that she would appear when men, deep in the woods, would wish to have a female companion or lover by their side. Then she would appear and strangle them. Like most fairies, she is said to be repelled by iron, and can be killed by an iron blade. The Baobhan Sith is best used as a twist combat encounter in my personal opinion. Having a harbinger or similar SPC warn the party to never wish for their lover to be near them while in the haunted woods is tempting to certain players who love to push the big red button. If you'd rather not have to wait for some sort of trigger mechanism to have her appear for your players, simply introducing the mysterious woman in the green dress is enough to start this encounter. Mami Wata is a term for a myriad of water deities from Africa and South America that share similar traits and portrayals across cultures. Though sometimes human, most Mami Wata are described to look similar to a mermaid, with a woman's naked torso and head and the hindquarters of a fish or serpent. She is one of the few creatures on this list to have some male depictions, though she is widely seen as a female figure. She often carries expensive trinkets with her, such as combs, mirrors, and watches. A common depiction of her has a large snake wrapped around her with its head between her breasts. At times, Mami Wata may try to pass as completely human, wandering busy markets or frequenting bars. It is said that if she finds a male follower, that she will persuade him to sleep with her, and after the deed, make him promise to devote himself wholly to her under the threat of losing his life, family, and fortune. Mami Wata is not as villainous as many of the other creatures in this list. You can certainly use her as such, but her motivation and power see her as more than just a seductress. Creating a situation where PC has to swear loyalty to her, lose everything they love, is a great way to bring tension if her goals do not align with the band. Or if the PC already has a love interest and must now choose between following her heart or keeping her deal with Mami Wata. Mohini is not represented amongst the Deva present in Scion, but she is an important member of the Hindu religion all the same. She is the only female avatar of the god Vishu, who is represented in Scion. Mohini is said to have been the one to distribute the elixir of life to the gods as they lay dying, whilst keeping it out of the hands of demons. But Mohini is also an enchantress and a temptress. She is said to be beautiful and intoxicating, bringing lovers and demons alike to madness and death. While she may not be someone to bring your players up against for combat, she's a beautifully complex character that will entice and intrigue while breeding caution for messing with the divine. Mohini is not a villain and is quite important in the Hindu faith as a protector and healer, but she's dangerous as well. If you want to introduce an SPC who's flirtatious, righteous, but not to be trifled with, Mohini is an excellent choice. Fox spirits, or Huli Jing, are not wholly evil in Chinese mythology. In fact, the nine-tailed foxes of folklore are seen as both good and bad omens, depending on the context and personal beliefs of the people. However, there is some evidence to support the use of Huli Jing as seductresses. There is some literature that describes a fox gaining the ability to turn into a woman at 50 years of age, but only into a beautiful woman at 100 years old. Or if she chooses to become, quote, an adult male who has sexual intercourse with women, end quote. They are also said to be able to confuse, poison, and steal memories from men. But there is hope for the fox. Upon becoming 1,000 years old, a fox can become a celestial fox, ascending into heaven. Huli Jing are mischievous creatures. They don't set out to kill, but they can be nuisances. Deadly nuisances, at times. They can be tricksters if you like, tempting your band and stealing away with trinkets and memories for a merry chase around the city, before giving the stolen loot back with an impish grin. Or they can be looking to get it to heaven, seeking to do good deeds that could get them to their 1,000 years of age. Maybe being a fox spirit has a different idea of what right and wrong is. Choice is up to you. One of the only demons that have been on this list, Xtabay, is from the Yucatan Peninsula. She is a young, beautiful woman with sleek black hair that trails down past her feet and wears a contrasting white dress. There are a few different accounts of how exactly she kills her victims, but most start, how else, by having her seduce a man in the woods. Some say she waits behind a ceiba tree and combs her hair with the spines of a cactus. After she lures men deep into the woods, making them lost and disoriented, she has sex with them. Similar to Mami Wata, Wata, Xtabay can appear in any form or sex she chooses. Once she and the hapless man have had sex, Xtabay transforms into a poisonous serpent and devours them. In other versions of the myth, Xtabay throws her lover over a cliff and rips out their heart. Xtabay is a great goddess to use for a long-term antagonist should you choose. As a shapeshifter, she can create suspicion amongst the party and sow doubt towards them. If you feel comfortable with it, you could even ask a player to act as Xtabay disguised as their PC and attempt to influence the band's decisions. While not part of the myth, Xtabay's name has ties meaning to hang or gallows, so I suggest it may be fun to have Xtabay try to hang her victims with her hair. The Deer Woman is not nearly as bloodthirsty as other seductresses on this list. Instead, she is seen as a protector of women and children against men who would cause them harm. She appears as either a woman with deer feet or as a deer herself. If a man has harmed those she protects, the Deer Woman seduces them before killing them. Although the Deer Woman is usually considered a benign spirit who might help women conceive children, some stories portray her as a more dangerous being who might seduce men, particularly adulterous or promiscuous men, and either lead them to their deaths or leave them to pine away from lovesickness. The Deer Woman does not have to be an antagonist, and she can be a guardian, helper, and healer should you choose. If you feel so inclined, you could even allow a player to make a Deer Woman PC like the Satyr and Kitsune paths. A Deer Woman could be a social worker, nurse, lawyer, or some other SPC that helps the band in times of need, or gives them plot hooks in order to help her people who are in peril, such as a child poisoned by supernatural means that needs a specific plant that she cannot retrieve on her own in order to recover. As I close out this video, I want to make one last note on consent. Folkloric seductresses, by their very nature, have the ability to gain some amount of emotional and mental control of their prey. There is no way that you can actually change the way your players feel or think about these monsters, and it is not a good idea to try and force your players to feel a certain way about them. You can't always keep the secret of seductresses' manipulation going for as long as you plan to, and having no control over their characters' thoughts or actions is no fun for a player over long periods of time. This doesn't mean that you necessarily have to give up on such manipulation, but do not try and force your players to bend to the seductress's whims if they don't want to, and be flexible if your players seem unhappy with the idea of being completely infatuated with a creature. It's alright to let go of the long con and just go for a straight up battle. D&D allows the mind control succubi have over their victims to be broken by a check. Don't be afraid to leave the same key for your players as well. Just because they didn't live for a week under the control of your Siren, it doesn't mean they didn't experience the story or themes you wanted to impart.